Next thing on the docket we got to get into, though, beyond Aaron Rodgers, 3-time All-Pro cornerback Jalen Ramsey of the Miami Dolphins on the move, or set to be on the move here, as we heard from the GM of the Miami Dolphins himself, Chris Grier. They are looking to move him. Now, Jalen Ramsey is due $25.1 million, fully guaranteed in 2025. The Dolphins have already paid out $4 million of that, so whoever opts to trade for him is on the hook for about $21 million and some change. Now, Chris Grier told reporters during his pre-draft news conference that Ramsey didn't ask to be traded, but the decision came after numerous conversations between both sides kind of helped them get to the conclusion that it was time to part ways and maybe move on. I think this is a little bit interesting because, and I mean, this is not just my opinion. This is something I've gathered from a lot of draft analysts and just people who follow all these teams. The Dolphins seem like they have a lot of work to do with their secondary, especially at the cornerback spot, and to see them be so willing to move on from Jalen Ramsey right now, a little bit surprising. I'm assuming they want to get younger at the position and just kind of reset the room a bit. So I'm assuming now with this possibility of trading Jalen Ramsey, if it gets done before the draft actually happens, you're going to see a lot of capital, at least 2 corners, I would say, coming out of this draft class going into Miami. So definitely something worth taking of note as Miami looks to move. But there's also the possibility, of course, that they wait post-draft and maybe they take a little bit of a higher pick in a draft further down the road just to be able to get a little bit more compensation out of him at this point here. But it'll be interesting to see where he goes. And it was also, I think, worth noting that Chris Grier went out of his way to mention that Jalen Ramsey is the only star player that Miami's looking to move right now. Regarding T.Y. Hilton, or not T.Y. Hilton, excuse me, Colts fan talking here, Tyreek Hill, and how he could potentially get moved has been a topic of conversation for basically the entirety of the offseason. He went out and stated because of trade conversation, it's not anything that they're pursuing at this current moment in time. So interesting wording, because that does leave a little bit of an opening as far as doors are concerned, that maybe the Dolphins aren't the ones pursuing the trade, but if somebody came in and offered them something that they couldn't refuse, maybe they'd be willing to make that move. So the Dolphins aren't pursuing it, but he didn't outright say that we're not exploring that opportunity at all if somebody comes calling. So interesting wordage. Now, as for Jalen Ramsey and where he should land, this was a little bit of a fun experiment to go through here and just kind of look through some of the teams. Now, I decided to put together a list. We got 4 teams all together here, a couple of NFC West teams, another NFC South team, and then we have ourselves a team in the AFC as well we'll get into. But basically, when I was looking at this, is teams that definitely need an upgrade at the cornerback spot, but because of that $21 million guaranteed next year, obviously it's something that can get restructured, but it needs to be a team that can bring him in, and whether that restructure happens or not is irrelevant because they have the cap space and the money to work with regardless of what happens there. The first team that I have on here, and it'll go from, I would say, in order of least likely to most likely, 49ers. $39 million in cap space according to Spotrac here. They allowed Charvarius Ward, obviously, to walk this past offseason, and on top of that, their defense just got plucked. The cabinets were open, and everyone was coming in taking their fair share. So a defense that was stripped of a ton of talent and definitely could use what I would consider not even just a Band-Aid. I would say Jalen Ramsey's more like a good, nice gauze wrap or something. It's a little bit more than a Band-Aid. I feel like Band-Aid's not strong enough here. Jalen Ramsey would be a nice addition to a defense that has lost a lot and could use a veteran presence, a guy that you can just plug in and you know he will be reliable for you so long as he stays healthy in that cornerback room. Now, it would be a little bit interesting to see them bring in a guy who's getting paid so much money after you let Charvarius Ward walk, but there was a lot going on with the 49ers and a lot of transition happening there, and so they made the decision to let a lot of people go. This is, again, least likely of the 4 teams I have on here, but something that would make sense to, again, help basically stop the bleeding of the defense that lost so many players this offseason. The other team I have on here, also very, I wouldn't say least likely, but this is one that they have so many areas of need that this one would make a ton of sense in my eyes. The Cardinals, also in the NFC West here, $32 million in cap space, so plenty of money to work with here, according to Spotrac. You got Sean Murphy Bunting and Max Melton as your top guys in the cornerback room, but this was a middle of the pack, ranked 14th in the NFL in terms of yards per game, or passing yards per game allowed, This is one that, for a team that went ahead and basically doubled their win total from the year prior and shocked a lot of people, maybe moved a little bit further ahead ahead than anyone, even in Arizona, was anticipating. Jalen Ramsey kind of gives you that boost you need, that veteran presence, a guy who's done it and won it type deal that could really help elevate that secondary and bring it to the next level here as you try to further that progression you had. This is a team that hovered around 500 at the end of last season. Now you're looking to get into that double-digit win column and really push yourself into that next step. So the way I see it, Jalen Ramsey, perfect fit for a team that's exploring the possibility of being a actual playoff contending team in an NFC West that's kind of up for grabs right now. Like, there's no clear front runner anymore in the NFC West. If the Arizona Cardinals are looking to capitalize and they want to make a little bit of a splash, especially after the draft, once they kind of see where they stand, makes a ton of sense to me. The next team, flipping over to the AFC, still in the West, but in the AFC, the Raiders. With the most cap space of the 4 teams I have listed here, the Raiders make a lot of sense. You obviously watched Nate Hobbs be allowed to walk this offseason. This was a defense that ranked 15th in passing yards per game allowed. Your cornerback room is headlined by guys like Jacorian Bennett, DeCamarion Richardson. You have Eric Stokes as well. So you have a solid core of guys, but this is one of those guys, but it's a younger group of guys. And this is where you see, all right, we bring in Jalen Ramsey. He can solidify one side of the field or the other that you need him to work on and help teach some of these younger guys just what it actually takes to be a top-end elite level corner in the NFL. Again, yes, this is Jalen Ramsey, who's getting older now. He's, far closer to 30 than he is 20 years old at this point now, if he's not already 30 years old. I forget exactly how old he is, but he's on the older side of things, on the back nine of his career. So you bring him in, you're helping out some of these young guys learn the ropes and learn what it takes to be one of those top-end guys. Makes a ton of sense to me, especially because the Raiders now, with Geno Smith, if they address the running game and maybe get themselves another good wide receiver in the draft towards the top portion of it, you bring in a guy like Jalen Ramsey, and you're starting to really feel like you have yourself a rounded out unit defensively and offensively, and the Raiders can make some noise as like a 7, 6, 5 seed in the AFC, fighting for one of those wild card spots. And then finally, this last team is the team that makes the most sense to me in my eyes. It's got to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Plenty of cap space to work with at $32 million. This would be a literal shot in the arm for a playoff team that has been dominating the NFC South of the last few years. For a team that allowed the 4th most passing yards per game, you have question marks surrounding Jamel Dean to the point where Todd Bowles was even talking about how, his potential of being on this roster come the start of the 2025 season was up in the air, and he pointed a lot to the injuries and the unavailability of him to this point in his young career. Zion McCollum in the spot of like their 1A, 1B type guys at this current point now, where, if Jamel Dean could stay healthier, you'd feel a lot better about it. You bring him in, and for me, I the way I see it, in the red and pewter, like, come on, he would look great. And on top of that, you're talking about somebody who currently plays in Miami. So if you're looking from Jalen Ramsey's end, playing in Miami, going to Tampa Bay, you basically go from the South Shore of Florida to the West Coast of Florida. Not a bad move in my eyes. Makes a ton of sense for him. So if that's somewhere he wants to go, if I'm Jalen Ramsey, that's where I'm vouching for. Send me over to Tampa Bay. Not a big move, not a big issue. You don't even have to move. You're basically just a long commute. You get a temporary spot in Tampa Bay if you want to retire in Miami when you're done, and you're good to go. So Tampa Bay makes a ton of sense, and in my eyes, the most sense, especially for a team that's in the playoff hunt. You're basically the front runner, I would say, just kind of off the top. For the NFC South, you're competing for playoff spots. You're competing for good positioning in the NFC. All of it, from money to location to the actual state of the team, makes a ton of sense for a guy like Jalen Ramsey, who could be in there to boost the team like that and push them a little bit further into that playoff run they're trying to make next year.